Welcome back to Educator.com's English Grammar course. This lesson is about infinitives and gerunds. Let's get started. All right, we're going to begin with an overview of this lesson. We're going to start by asking, what is a gerund? We're going to find out what they are, what they do, and how to use them. Specifically, how to use them as subjects, complements, and objects. And don't worry, we'll review what those things actually are. Then we'll ask, what is an infinitive? And we'll learn how to use infinitives correctly in a sentence. All right, what is a gerund? Well, a gerund is a base verb form. Remember, that's the form that we think of as the central part of the verb, the kernel that you form all those other tenses around, with ing on the end. This may sound familiar, but here's the difference. A gerund functions as a noun. Don't confuse a gerund with a present participle, which you'll have studied in an earlier lesson. A present participle is the base form of a verb with ing on the end. They look exactly like gerunds, but you can't get them mixed up because a present participle may be part of the verb or it may function as an adjective. What defines a gerund is that it functions the same as a noun or pronoun. What it does in the sentence determines what it is. If you're not sure whether a word is a gerund, try replacing it with a noun that's functioning as a noun and see whether it still makes sense. Let's look at an example. Let's take the word cooking. It can be a verb, I am cooking. There we're describing an activity. I, at this present moment in time, am cooking something. You can also use it as an adjective. I teach a cooking class. Cooking in this case is an adjective modifying class. But if it's being used as a gerund, as in the sentence, I love cooking, it's taking the place of a noun or pronoun. It's doing that job. You could swap a noun in there. You could say, I love music or I love food just as easily, and the sentence would still make equivalent grammatical sense. All right, how do we use gerunds? First, they may be used as subjects, just like nouns and pronouns. Painting is my passion. The subject of the sentence is painting, and the verb is. You may also use a gerund as a complement, a subject complement. Now remember, a complement is the thing on the other side of the equal sign from the subject when you use a linking verb. A linking verb is any verb you can replace with an equal sign. This is that, this equals that. The that is the subject complement, and in this case you can use a gerund for it. So, just as in our first sentence we said painting is my passion, you could easily reverse it and say my passion is painting. Well, our subject is passion, our verb is, and our complement is painting. Once again, you could easily swap a noun in there and still have the sentence make sense. My passion is music. Gerunds may also be used as objects, direct, indirect, or objects of a preposition. Again, these are all things that nouns and pronouns can do and verbs can't. That's how you know they're gerunds. He enjoys painting. All right, there we have the direct object of the verb enjoys. Give painting a chance. Here we have an indirect object. Our verb is give. Our direct object is chance. And our indirect object is painting, because painting is what is receiving the direct object, the chance. And finally, she taught me about painting. Well, this is a prepositional phrase. Includes the preposition about. About what? About painting. You remember, a prepositional phrase is anything you can do to a log. She taught me about the log, about painting. So you can use a gerund in pretty much any way you can use a noun. All right, gerunds are very commonly used after certain verbs. If you see one of these verbs, chances are it's an opportunity to use a gerund. Admit, appreciate, avoid, deny, discuss, dislike, and of course you can also use like, imagine, keep, miss, quit, recall, and resist. Let's look at a few examples. Please keep working while I step out. This is definitely a gerund. It's not any other kind of verb, and it follows the verb keep. He admits taking the sandwich. Our verb is admits, and notice that in place of taking the sandwich, you could put a noun in like theft. He admits theft. Perfectly grammatical. I can't resist scaring you. All right, our verb is can resist. Nt is, of course, an adverb modifying can. And scaring is our gerund. And again, it's taking the place of a noun. You could say, I can't resist chocolate, and have it make just as much sense. She avoids walking alone. Avoids is our verb. Walking is our gerund. And again, it's acting like a noun. You could just as easily say she avoids crowds. All right, let's look at infinitives for a moment. What is an infinitive? An infinitive is a form of a verb, and it's formed by adding to the base form of a verb. Infinitives are often part of a verb phrase. I plan to submit my resignation. So, plan is a verb. To submit is also a verb. It's one long phrase. He offered to drive me home. Similar. Now, here's the tricky part with infinitives. The word to can also be a preposition. If to is followed by a verb, it's part of an infinitive. If it's followed by a noun or a pronoun, it's a preposition. Once again, the function in the sentence tells you what something is. So, it's an infinitive to say, I like to sing. Sing is, of course, a verb, and it's never a noun. But you can use to as a preposition and say, I went to Paris. Well, Paris is a noun. It's a proper noun. It's always a noun. There's no verb to Paris. So you know that our second sentence is a prepositional phrase, and our first sentence uses to in the context of an infinitive. Now, just like gerunds commonly follow certain verbs, infinitives commonly follow certain other verbs. So, you can very often see infinitives after agree, ask, beg, decide, expect, fail, need, offer, plan, refuse, venture, and want. Let's look at some examples. We agreed to amend the contract. Once again, we've got agree up there and down here, and it's followed by the infinitive to amend. I fail to see your reasoning. They refuse to listen to us, and I want to go home. All right, now here's a tricky bit with infinitives. You can use them after these verbs on this list when they are followed by a noun or a pronoun. So they're followed by a direct or indirect object. Advise, allow, ask, convince, encourage, expect, order, persuade, remind, urge, want, and warn. Notice anything interesting? Almost all of these verbs describe communication with something intelligent, a person, an animal, something. Let's look at some examples. I warned you to lock the door. Once again, we're using warned. Well, you can only warn something capable of thinking, and in this case, that would be the direct object, you. You is receiving the warning. I warned you, infinitive, to lock the door. She reminded him to buy milk. I want joy to explain this to me. And I urge you, to reconsider. Once again, you're communicating with a human being, you're giving them some kind of advice or warning or an order or something of that nature, and you're using the infinitive to tell them what you want them to do or what you think they should do. All right, here's the fun part of infinitives and gerunds. In some contexts, they can be used for exactly the same purpose. When you are describing an activity, you can use either an infinitive or a gerund after certain verbs and still be correct either way. Now remember, infinitives and gerunds are both used to express sort of the abstract concept of a verb, the idea of the activity. So if you're using a simple construction like I like, or I love, or I hate, then you can have the abstract concept of the verb right after your main verb, and either an infinitive or gerund will do. Let's look at some examples. I love to bake means exactly the same thing as I love baking. In either case, you're saying I love the activity of stirring stuff together and putting it in the oven. I hate to swim. I don't like getting wet. I hate swimming has exactly the same meaning. I love to run and I love running. Once again, two sentences, same meaning, gerund, infinitive, you can use either one. All right, let's do a little practice. See if you can figure out whether an infinitive or a gerund goes in each of these sentences. The Commission hopes, something to do with stabilize, the wolf population soon. I have been thinking of, some form of buy, a new car. Nothing you can say will convince me, some form of change, my mind. And we have discussed, some form of travel, to Europe. Take a good look, pause the video if you need to. And here we are. The Commission hopes to stabilize the wolf population soon. Your clue here was hopes. This is one of those verbs that are commonly followed by an infinitive. I have been thinking of buying a new car. Your clue here was the preposition of. Of is pretty much always a preposition. So you need something that can act as the object of a preposition, and that is a gerund. Remember, gerunds can act like nouns and pronouns. And the object of a preposition must be a noun, a pronoun, or something that acts like one. Nothing you can say will convince me to change my mind. Your clue here was convince. This is one of those verbs that can be followed by an infinitive if it has a noun or a pronoun after it, in this case, me. Remember, you're talking about communicating an idea or an order to another human being. You very often use verb, object, infinitive. And we have discussed traveling to Europe. Your clue here was discussed. This is one of those verbs that's very often followed by a gerund. All right, let's do one more round of practice. I encourage you, some form of think, carefully about this decision. May I venture, some form of suggest, a good restaurant for lunch. Some form of dance is my life. I appreciate your some form of take the time to help me improve my grammar. Oh, you're welcome. Take a good look. Pause the video if you need to. And here we are. I encourage you to think carefully about this decision. Your clue here was the verb encourage. This is one of those verbs that's commonly followed by an infinitive if it has a noun or pronoun right after it as an object. In this case, we have you. Again, the idea of communicating to someone advice or an order. May I venture to suggest a good restaurant for lunch? Your clue here was the verb venture, which is very often followed by an infinitive. Dancing is my life. Your clue here was the structure of the sentence. You knew that the first word was missing and that it was going to be something related to a verb, but you have the subject is and the complement my life. So whatever you have in that first blank has to be the subject of the sentence. That means it has to be something doing the job of a noun or a pronoun, and that means that it had to be the gerund dancing. You could easily put a noun in there. Music is my life, food is my life, and it would make just as much sense. And finally, I appreciate your taking the time to help me improve my grammar. Once again, we're describing the abstract activity, and it's functioning as a noun. Your is a possessive pronoun, so you would normally expect anything following a possessive pronoun to describe the thing that's possessed, usually a noun or pronoun. So you needed something that does the job of a noun or pronoun, and that was the gerund taking. That's all for this lesson. Thank you for watching Educator.com.